Good evening, everyone. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to the convocation ceremony to celebrate our graduating students for the class of 2020 and 2021. To begin the ceremony, I would like to invite our Chancellor, Professor Rudrangshu Mukherjee, to kindly declare the convocation open.
Professor Eric Maskin, Madam Vice Chancellor, founders, colleagues, and last but not the least, the students who are the stars of this convocation. We meet, if meet is the correct word for this virtual event, under very unusual circumstances. I don't think anyone expected that we would be forced to hold ever an online convocation. Whereas the Chancellor, I would not have the privilege of handing out the degrees personally to my students and shake their hands. I'm sorry that I'm unable, under the present circumstances, to welcome Professor Maskin to the Ashoka campus. I hope we will be able to do that in the not too distant future. A convocation is always a joyous occasion, but this particular convocation is tinged by sadness because all around us is the ambiance that is informed by illness, suffering, and in some cases, death that has affected all our lives. To the graduating students, I want to say that in spite of the travails that we are all enduring, all of you have experienced the excitement and the benefits that the liberal education Ashoka has to offer. I'm sure you have learned to think for yourselves and liberate yourselves from prejudice and insularity, that you have learned to doubt, to animate, and to imagine. I sincerely hope that what you have learned at Ashoka will enable you in the future to fashion your lives and reshape the society by taking responsibility for your beliefs and actions. One of the important lessons a liberal education imparts is to think about a better future, to imbibe hope in our lives. This lesson is particularly important for this graduating cohort because through the pandemic, you've experienced the power of hope, the power of compassion, and the power of caring. A very important phase of your lives comes to an end with this convocation, but a much more significant and challenging phase begins in which you will make relevant to India and the world what you have learned at Ashoka. Your journey has just begun, and I can assure you that all of you carry our best wishes. God bless. Take care of yourselves and those around you. You hold not just a degree in your hands, you hold the future in the palm of your hands. With these words, Madam Vice Chancellor, I declare this convocation to be open.
Thank you, Chancellor Mukherjee. It is my pleasure to invite our Vice Chancellor, Professor Malvika Sarkar, to please address the graduating class.
Respected Chancellor, members of the governing body, Ashoka's founders and faculty, members of the Ashoka community, parents, friends, and our graduating students of 2020 and 2021. Greetings on this historic occasion of a joint virtual convocation for two graduating batches. Congratulations to our students for your achievement in incredibly difficult circumstances. I thank the Chancellor for his inspiring words to you. A convocation is always a celebratory occasion, a time to reflect on the achievements of the graduating batch of students and of the university in the year gone by. We are gathered today after 2 years. In the sunshine of August 2019, with the world as we had always known it, Ashoka was on a positive trajectory. Initial plans for the Trivedi School of Biosciences had begun. A major in chemistry had started. A new library building was under construction, and meticulous planning to make this library the heart of academic life at Ashoka was in progress. Our flagship multidisciplinary center, 3CS, Center for Climate Change and Sustainability, had been formed. And there was much excitement about our new land for the second campus, adjacent to where we are. Then the world was turned upside down with the COVID-19 pandemic. Looking back, there are 3 questions we might ask ourselves. First, how did Ashoka respond to COVID? Second, what did we contribute to the fight against COVID-19? And third, how did we sustain intellectual activity in spite of COVID? The first of these questions, how did we respond to COVID? I think we can say with some satisfaction that Ashoka's response to the pandemic was very swift. Within the span of a little over a week, in March 2020, our students were guided to return home safely, and our entire teaching moved to the online format. Since that time till today, our teaching, learning, assessments have all been online. Our success in this format earned Ashoka Diamond rating for e-learning from QS. At the same time, we must not forget the compassion and practical help with which students, faculty, administrators came together to reach out to each other, to the entire Ashoka community, and to the community beyond our campus. How did Ashoka contribute to India's fight against COVID? Ashoka's scientists contributed to India's first state-level epidemiological model and to the development of a multi-scale agent-based simulation framework to track the progress of COVID-19 in India. These have been significant contributions. Additionally, many departments, from economics to sociology to many others, and the many centers at Ashoka, contributed to multifaceted understanding and problem solving at the time of COVID. And then, as we gradually began to understand that a post-COVID world was going to be delayed, academic resurgence began again at Ashoka. The Global Humanities project, by which the University of Cambridge designated Ashoka as the nodal university in the subcontinent, that project picked up momentum. A new Sanskrit Studies department was instituted. Exciting discipline-specific and interdisciplinary new centers have begun. Ashoka's first name chair Shunanda and Shantime Basu Chair in Astrophysics was instituted from an endowment, and we are planning to create an astrophysics center around it. The university also instituted annual lecture series on the theme of interdisciplinarity called the Inspire Lectures. And the inaugural lecture in this series was delivered in June of this year by Professor Dame Gillian Beer of the University of Cambridge. Reviewing the 2 years gone by, I am reminded of the song that became iconic, The Windmills of Your Mind, made famous in the film The Thomas Crown Affair. The image of the constantly revolving doors of the song is reflective of the endless energy and intellectual productivity that the university has displayed over these 2 years. There are many stories of varying magnitudes of achievement, innovation, and compassion over these 2 years that this university is proud of, that cannot be encapsulated here. For our graduating students gathered here today, the world is all before you. I have every confidence that the values you have imbibed, the intellectual curiosity that has become your second nature, the many areas of knowledge that you have discovered, the countries of the mind that you have traversed as students of Ashoka University will equip you to lead fulfilling lives. This university, as your alma mater, wishes you every success. It is now my great privilege to introduce to you our distinguished convocation speaker, Professor Eric Maskin. Professor Eric Maskin is the Adams University professor and professor of economics and mathematics at Harvard. He is internationally acclaimed for his contribution to game theory, contract theory, social choice theory, political economy, and other areas of economics. In 2007, he was awarded the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economics for laying the foundations of mechanism design theory. Professor Baskin received his AB and PhD from Harvard and was a postdoctoral fellow at Jesus College, Cambridge. He was a faculty member at MIT, then at Harvard, then at the Institute for Advanced Study, rejoining Harvard as faculty in 2012. He has served on the editorial board of some of the leading international journals. He is on the board of trustees for the Guggenheim Foundation. He is on many international advisory boards and on selection juries for prestigious prizes in economics. Professor Maskin is an honorary professor of 18 universities and recipient of 17 honorary doctorates. He is a fellow of many prestigious academies, both in America and in Europe, and recipient of many prestigious prizes worldwide, including the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2007. It is my great privilege to invite Professor Eric Maskin to deliver the convocation address.
Chancellor Rudrangshu Mukherjee, Vice Chancellor Malabika Sarkar, Pro-Vice Chancellors, Deans, Registrar, faculty, parents, and the graduating classes of 2020 and 2021. It is a great honor for me to be speaking to you on this happy occasion, and a special word to you students. It's a notable accomplishment, even at the best of times, to graduate from university. But to work and study and complete all the requirements of a degree under the circumstances of a worldwide pandemic, a pandemic that continues to take a terrible toll on your country, that is a truly extraordinary accomplishment. And I offer you and your parents my warmest congratulations. You should be very proud of what you have done. I gave a lot of thought to what I should talk about today. And in the end, I decided that I wouldn't talk about the pandemic. Although it is naturally on everyone's mind at the moment, it is, we expect, only a temporary calamity. In a few years, it will be, we hope, a receding memory. A dreadful one, to be sure, but not a persisting problem. Yet India will still be facing some huge challenges that may be even harder to solve than the pandemic. And because you graduates are the future leaders of India, it will be up to you to deal with these challenges. So I'd like to spend a few minutes today talking about one of them, the problem of increasing income inequality. I'm speaking to you as someone who is interested in this subject as a scholar. I've devoted much of my research to trying to understand why income inequality has been increasing in India and other countries, and what can be done about it. The world has witnessed enormous growth in global markets in the last 25 years or so. Specifically, there has been a sharp upswing in the exchange of goods and services across international borders. There has also been much more production of goods and services across international borders. For example, the design of a product in one country and its assembly in another. And this sort of international production will be something I will come back to in a few minutes. The reasons for increased globalization include declining transport costs, falling trade tariffs, but as you'll see, it's decreasing communication costs that have been the most important factor behind globalization. People who support globalization have made many promises on its behalf. In particular, they have predicted that it would bring prosperity to emerging economies. And on that score, they have often been right. In India, for example, GDP per capita, which is a crude but common measure of prosperity, has grown in spectacular fashion since 2000, thanks to global markets. And many other emerging economies have come a long way too, if not quite so dramatically. However, according to its supporters, globalization was also supposed to reduce income inequality, the gap between the haves and the have-nots in developing countries. Yet in many such countries, wage inequality has actually increased. And once again, India is a leading example. One might ask, of course, why we should care about inequality. There are at least three reasons why it matters. The first is an egalitarian argument. We believe that all people deserve equal treatment, and so huge disparities in income offend our moral impulses. But even if one isn't an egalitarian, one might want to eradicate poverty. And eliminating poverty is closely connected to inequality, since in developing countries, anti-poverty measures are often anti-inequality measures too. But even if we put poverty elimination to one side, one might be concerned about inequality for a very practical reason. there is a well-established correlation between inequality and social and political instability. In fact, the rise of inequality in such countries as Brazil has led to great political polarization and the rise of authoritarianism. So simply for the sake of keeping the social and political fabric together, fighting inequality should be an important policy priority. Now, we should ask whether the rise of inequality in so many developing countries is surprising. Actually, if we accept the theory of comparative advantage, then the answer is yes, because the recent trend in greater inequality contradicts the theory of comparative advantage. This is a theory that goes back more than 200 years to David Ricardo, and it is by far the most important tool for understanding international trade patterns. Historically, it has been enormously successful empirically. In fact, in all previous globalizations, and there have been plenty of previous globalizations, comparative advantage predictions were right on the money, implying that freeing up trade should reduce inequality in emerging economies. Now, because the theory is so important and has been so successful previously, let me take a few minutes to explain why it predicts that inequality should actually fall. According to the theory of comparative advantage, the reason countries trade with one another is that they have different endowments of the inputs to production. For example, one country might have an abundance of arable lands. Another might have a big supply of fossil fuels. And so the first country will grow agricultural products and exchange those for the other country's coal. But to make the connection to wage inequality, income inequality, let me make a simplifying assumption and suppose that all inputs are labor inputs. Let's assume that there's high-skilled labor and low-skilled labor. Let's compare a rich country with a developing country. In the rich country, the ratio of high-skill to low-skill workers is bigger. That's, after all, what makes the rich country rich. This means that the rich country has a comparative advantage producing goods requiring a big proportion of high-skilled workers. For example, computer software. The emerging economy, by contrast, has a comparative advantage in producing goods for which skill doesn't matter as much. Many agricultural goods fall into this category, and let's take the example of rice. Now, to see the effect of globalization on inequality, we should look at production patterns before globalization, that is, before the rich and developing countries trade, and after globalization, after free trade between the two countries is introduced. And the difference between the two can be attributed to globalization. Now, before trade is opened, both software and rice must be produced in each country because the citizens in each country want both goods. But there's a sense in which producing software in the developing country is inefficient because the country's labor force, with its relative abundance of low-skilled workers, seems better suited to rice. In fact, low-skilled workers in the emerging economy are hurt to the extent that the country is producing software. They're not much needed for software, but they're greatly needed for rice. And so if production is diverted away from rice to software, demand for low-skilled labor is suppressed, and low-skill wages are likely to be especially low. By contrast, high-skill workers in the developing country benefit from all the software production and will enjoy especially high wages. Now let's see what happens when the door to trade between the rich country and the developing country is opened. Well, now the developing country will shift production from software to rice because it can import its software from the rich country. And the rich country will do just the opposite. It will shift production to software, and it will import rice from the developing country. So the developing country now produces more rice and less software than before, and this raises the demand for low-skill workers, since rice uses low-skill workers more intensively. And so the low-skill wage will rise. Now, the demand for high-skill workers falls because these high-skill workers are not much needed for rice. So the high-skill wage will fall. In other words, inequality in the developing country, the difference between the high-skill wage and the low-skill wage, will be reduced as a consequence of globalization. Now, what I've just described is the standard story for why globalization should lower inequality in emerging economies. And in fact, the story fits very well historically when applied to previous globalizations. For example, in the second half of the 19th century, Europe had a relative abundance of low-skill labor, whereas the United States was better endowed with high-skill labor. And partly because of a notable decline in transatlantic shipping costs, trade between the US and Europe rose considerably in that period. And just as the theory of comparative advantage predicts, inequality fell substantially in Europe. Remember, Europe had the relative abundance of low-skill labor. But as I noted, comparative advantage theory has been less successful for the recent globalization. One of its predictions is that the bigger the difference in skill ratios between two countries, the more those countries should trade with one another, because the greater will be the gains from exchange. But in reality, the current globalization has generated very little trade between the most highly skilled nations, for example, the United States, and the least skilled countries of the world, such as Malawi. But more importantly, the decline in inequality that the theory predicts has not materialized, and quite the opposite. So a colleague of mine, Michael Kramer, and I were puzzled by how poorly the standard theory of comparative advantage was working for explaining the current globalization. And it led us to develop a new theory, which suggests that what distinguishes the recent globalization from previous globalizations has been the internationalization of the production process itself. The fact, for example, that computers might be designed in the US and programmed in Europe and assembled in China. In other words, the computer production process is itself international. And because of dramatically lower communication costs, a Chinese worker today can be employed by a country on the opposite side of the world. So our theory, Michael Kramer's theory and mine, starts from the premise that the labor market now is truly global, that is the salient feature of today's globalization. Now, to think about a global labor market, it's no longer enough to suppose that there are just two skill levels, high skill and low skill. So let's now suppose that there are 4 levels. And for convenience, I will call them A, B, C, and D. So A is the highest skill, then B, then C, then D. So D is down at the bottom. As before, let's imagine that there are 2 countries, one rich, one emerging. And to simplify, I'll suppose that the rich country has workers of skill level A and B, and the developing country has workers of C and D. Now, this, of course, is an oversimplification, but it will help make my point. As before, it's skills that make a country rich or not. So in this new theory, wages depend on how workers of different skill levels are matched together to produce output. So let's imagine that the production process consists of 2 tasks. There's a managerial task, which is highly sensitive to skill, and a subordinate task, which is less sensitive to skill. And output is created when an employer hires workers to fill those tasks. The worker hired to fill the managerial task and the worker hired to fill the subordinate task. The 2 workers are in effect matched with one another, and the amount of output that they produce will depend on their skill levels, both their skill levels. Now, in a setting like this, the matching pattern, who gets matched with whom, will depend very much on which workers are available. Now, there are 2 forces at work that push in opposite directions. On the one hand, because the managerial task is more sensitive to skill, there will be a tendency to have higher skill workers in the managerial position and lower skill workers in the subordinate position. But it would be a waste to match a very high skill manager with a very low skill subordinate, because then the manager cannot entirely compensate for the subordinate's low skill, and output is likely to be low. So the matching pattern that actually occurs will balance these 2 forces and will depend on how many of these A, B, C, and D workers are available in the labor force. So let's do the same kind of thought experiment, before the same sort of before and after comparison that I did a couple minutes ago when I was talking about comparative advantage. But now the difference between the before and after lies in the labor force available to a producer, to an employer. Before globalization, before international production becomes possible, a producer can hire workers only from its own country. And so all matching must be domestic. In the rich country, we might have A workers matched with B workers within a company. And in the developing country, we might expect C workers to be matched with D workers. But after globalization, international production is feasible, and a producer can hire workers from both countries. So this is going to lead to a different matching pattern. For example, C workers in the developing country may now work together with B workers from the rich country. And if that happens, that means that the D workers who previously were matched with C workers are left out. That they can match with other D workers, but they don't get to match with C workers anymore. So I'm interested in the effect of globalization on the wages of the C workers and the D workers, because those are the workers in the developing country. C workers have relatively high skills, so they get the opportunity of working with B workers in the rich country. And because they have this new opportunity, we will expect their wage to rise. But the D workers don't have sufficient skill to match with workers abroad. And so we will expect their wages to be stagnant or perhaps to even fall. So globalization of production is likely to amplify, to increase the gap between C workers' wages and D workers' wages. In other words, inequality in the developing country increases as a result of globalization. It's the expansion of opportunities for C workers and the stagnation or decline of opportunities for D workers that I claim accounts for much of the growing inequality in emerging economies over the last 25 years. Well, that's our diagnosis of the problem. But what is the cure? Well, one reaction would be simply to try and stop globalization. But even if this were possible, and I don't think it is, and at least not entirely, stopping globalization seems counterproductive since, as I noted, globalization has done a very good job of increasing overall prosperity in emerging economies. But a more fruitful route would be to try to raise the skill levels of the least advantaged workers, the D workers, so that they have international job opportunities too. This could be done through job training or education. The problem is that training and education are expensive. And so the question arises, who's going to pay for it? The workers themselves, D workers themselves, can't afford to pay for this training. These are some of the poorest people in the world. Now, you might hope that their employers would pay for the job training, but the problem is that employers might not have the incentive to pay, at least to pay for all the training, because if I'm a D worker and you're an employer and you give me training so that I can do your job, well, I don't actually have to then work for you. I could go to work for your competitor, in which case your investment in me is lost. And thinking ahead to the fact that an employer may not be able to hold on to the workers who have been trained, employers are not likely to put in sufficient investment in job training. So that means that inequality cannot be solved by market forces alone. Someone besides the workers and the employers will have to get involved. And that obvious someone is government. Government can provide public education and thereby develop general skills. Government can also develop specific skills, either by offering job training directly, or more likely by subsidizing employers that actually do train their D workers. And this brings me back to you, the graduates of Ashoka University. You will soon be the leaders of your country. What your government does will be in your hands. In fact, I suspect that many of you will be in government yourselves. Now, globalization has tripled Indian GDP in a generation, an amazing accomplishment, actually rather similar to the way that Ashoka University has improved in a very short time. But the D workers of India have been left out. If they are to share in this prosperity, it will be up to you, graduates of Ashoka University. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Maskins. It is time to award the degree to our graduating students for the class of 2020. We now have a dance film for you, created especially for the convocation ceremony. Justin McCarthy and Navteej Jauhar, faculty of the Performing Arts Department, have choreographed a piece delving into the beauty and power of female energy. The music is a late 18th century paean to the goddess Kamala Ambika. The dancers dialogue with the song, using traditional gestures and movements to infuse the lyrics with one more layer of meaning. The singer is Balakrishnan Raghavan. We hope you enjoy the film.
Kamalam bajar manas kamalam bajar manas kamalam bajar manas kalpita maya karyam tyajare kamalam bajar manas kalpita maya karyam tyajare kamalam bajar Kamalavani se vit parshvam Kamalavani se vit parshvam Kambujaya grivayam natadevam kamalapurasadanam mridukadanam kamaniyaradanam kamal vadanam kamalam bajar sarvasha paripuraka chakra swami paramashiva kamim परिपूरक चक्र स्वामिनी परम शिव कामिनी दूर्वास चित गुप्त योगिनी दुःख ध्वंसिनी हंसिनी निर्वाण निज सुख प्रदायिनी नित्य कल्याणी कात्यायनी शर्वणी मरूप विजयवेणी सद्गुरु गुरजननी निरञ्जनी गर्वित भण्डासुरभञ्जनी कामाकर्षिण्यादिरजनी निर्विशेष चैतन्यरूपिणी मूर्वितत्वदि स्वरूपिणीं कमलाम्बां भज रे मानस माया कार्यं त्यज रे माया माया कार्यं त्यज रे त्यज रे
Thank you, professors, for that mesmerizing performance. We now begin with the awarding of the degrees for the graduating students for the class of 2021. I now call upon the Dean of Academic Affairs for conferment of degree.
Respected Chancellor, I now present the students of the MA Economics and PG Diploma in Advanced Studies and Research Program, whose names are set out on the list and who have qualified to receive the degree and diploma respectively. I request that they may please be awarded the degree and PG diploma respectively.
By virtue of the authority vested in me as Chancellor of Ashoka University, I admit all the students to the degree of postgraduate program, and I charge you that ever in your thought and action, you prove yourself worthy of the honor conferred on you.
Respected Chancellor, I now present the students of the undergraduate program, whose names are set out on the list and who have qualified to receive the degree. I request that they may please be awarded the degree.
By virtue of the authority vested in me as Chancellor of Ashoka University, I admit all the students to the degree of undergraduate program, and I charge you that ever in your thought and action, you prove yourself worthy of the honor conferred on you.
We will now have the Dean of Academic Affairs recite the Ashoka Oath.
The ancient Indian king, after whom this university is named, asked the question, "What is Dhamma?" He answered, "It's having few faults and many good deeds, mercy, charity, truthfulness, and integrity. I commit myself to these values and through them move from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, and from death to immortality."
With this, we come to the end of the ceremony. I welcome the Dean of Student Affairs, Dr. Debashruti Roy Chaudhary, to please give us the vote of thanks.
Distinguished guests, it is my privilege to propose the vote of thanks this evening to acknowledge the many officers and individuals who have enabled the journey to this momentous occasion. On behalf of the university and the entire Ashoka community, I would like to express my sincere thanks to Professor Eric Maskins for accepting our invitation and delivering the keynote address today. We are grateful to our Chancellor, Professor Rudrangshu Mukherjee, for his wisdom and constant support towards crafting an institution of excellence. The university is indebted to our Vice Chancellor, Professor Malavika Sarkar, for her encouragement and steadfast leadership, especially during the last 20 months. Thank you, Professor Sarkar, for being a pillar of support and inspiring all of us to do our best through the years. I'd also like to express our gratitude to all the founders of Ashoka University who envisioned this phenomenal liberal arts experiment in Sonipat that has and continues to revolutionize Indian higher education. We also thank Pro Vice Chancellor, Administration and Finance Rajesh Karodia and his office for their guidance on matters ranging from campus operations to budgeting and everything else in between. I'm grateful to Pro Vice Chancellor, Development, Placements and Alumni Relations, Venkat Ishwara, and his office for helping the university community grow through numerous fundraising and community building initiatives. The university is also thankful for the cooperation extended by the Registrar's Office, starting with admissions all the way to the convocation and beyond. We are grateful to Vice President External Engagement and his team for their enterprising contributions towards building the Ashokan brand through their diverse offerings.
I must specifically acknowledge the efforts of the admissions and outreach teams for their ingenuity year after year in bringing the most eclectic group of students to Ashoka. We also thank the development and financial aid officers for their unwavering commitment to make education accessible to all our students. I extend our gratitude to our dedicated, beloved faculty members who, with their wealth of knowledge and experience, have strived to give our students deep-rooted foundations in various fields of study. We are thankful to the Dean of Global Education, Summer and Strategic Programs and her office for being instrumental in giving our students international exposure through institutional partnerships and exchange programs over the years. The university is indebted to the Dean of Research and Dean of Faculty and their offices for ensuring that a stellar team of scholars and researchers are available at Ashoka. We also express our sincere thanks to the Dean and Associate Dean of Academic Affairs, as well as their entire office, as they work tirelessly to enable the diverse academic pursuits of our students throughout their time at Ashoka. I must also acknowledge the contributions made by members of the Center for Writing and Communication, the Office of Learning Support, and the library for guiding our young talents and nurturing their critical thinking abilities. The university is also grateful to the Center for Wellbeing for providing the Ashoka community with a much needed space of comfort and care. I earnestly remember and appreciate my colleagues from the Office of Student Affairs who are a critical part of any student's life at Ashoka, be it their extracurricular interests or residential experience. The university is truly grateful to Vice President Operations and his entire team, which includes the infirmary, housekeeping, maintenance, dining, security, transport, laundry, and horticulture departments for ensuring a hassle-free, safe campus experience for all our students. I would like to specifically acknowledge the entire support staff at Ashoka who support us in practical ways behind the scenes. We owe them a huge debt of gratitude. We must also recognize the Sonipat District Commissioner's Office and the entire staff at the Batkhalsa Health Center for their counsel and prompt assistance throughout the pandemic. The Career Development Office deserves our heartfelt appreciation for working closely with various stakeholders to help our students achieve their professional goals. We also express our gratitude to all the IT personnel for their efforts to facilitate a truly world-class educational interface, especially during the challenging circumstances this past year. I also thank all the centers of excellence at Ashoka for offering our students an opportunity to be part of innovative programs and scientific research far beyond their curricular requirements. This vote of thanks would remain incomplete if I do not thank the convocation team, namely Harshit Thakkar, Sneha Singh Banerjee, Mayank Mishra, and Geos Reli Podipara, who have worked throughout the past few months to make this evening possible. The PR and communications team also deserves special appreciation for their efforts to make this occasion so beautiful and memorable through their numerous contributions. And before closing, I wish to congratulate the graduating class of 2020 and 2021 for enduring these testing times. As you emerge today as vibrant scholars, we thank you for choosing Ashoka University as a trusted companion in your pursuit of knowledge. The university also extends our gratitude to the supportive and tireless families of our students for enrolling their children with Ashoka and reposing their faith in us. Last but not the least, a big thank you to everyone who has joined us virtually on this joyous occasion to celebrate these young achievers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dean Roy Chaudhary. We will now have the national anthem. I request everyone, wherever you all may be, to please stand.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे
भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
Congratulations once again to our class of 2020 and 2021. We wish you all success, joy, and good health in your new journey. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Stay safe and stay well.